Morning, God's people.
Good morning.
God warns us about the way of Balaam in his word. And because the way of Balaam can take us away from our worship of God and can even lead us away from salvation. You know, Balaam is a fascinating character in the Bible. He was a wicked prophet, a diviner, a soothsayer who is someone who predicts the future using sorcery. He lived in Aram in Mesopotamia, which today is the area of Iraq. And just to set the story up, basically the Israelites were coming through, and they had just defeated Sihon and Og, the two kings of the Amorites. And now they were passing through the area of the land of Moab. And Balak, the king of Moab, was very concerned. Maybe he's next. And so he sends emissaries all the way to Mesopotamia to seek Balaam. And we're introduced to, and by the way, just for a little background, the Moabites and the Midianites also lived there. Basically, they worshiped Baal, B-A-A-L, of Peor. Baal means Lord. Peor was the mountain where they went up to worship. And basically, they worshipped Baal through obscene rituals, such as ritual prostitution was part of their worship. Baal was considered to be a fertility god. Many of the gods of the pagans were sun gods or fertility gods. And they ate animal sacrifices made to the dead. You could verify that in Psalm 106:28, that they ate animal sacrifices made to the dead. And also, they engaged in human sacrifices, the firstborn, usually. And you could verify that in Jeremiah 19 and verse 5. Well, let's get introduced to Balaam in Numbers 22. Go to Numbers 22, please. And what is this way of Balaam that God warns us about? And Balaam's a fascinating character because even though he was a wicked prophet, God was going to speak to him, and God was going to speak through him. So we go to Numbers 22, and verse 1. Then the children of Israel moved and camped in the plain of Moab on the side of the Jordan across from Jericho. So they were about to go into the promised land. Now Balak, the son of Zippor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites, and he's the king of Moab. And Moab was exceedingly afraid of the people because they were many. And Moab was sick with dread because of the children of Israel. They were very, very worried. So Moab said to the elders of Midian, "Now this company will lick up everything around us, as an ox licks up the grass of the field." And Balak, the son of Zippor, was king of the Moabites at the time. Then he sent messengers to Balaam, the son of Beor, at Pethor, which is near the river, and that's the Euphrates River, in the land of the sons of his people, to call him, saying, "Look, a people has come from Egypt. See, they cover the face of the earth, and are settling next to me. Therefore, please come at once, curse this people for me, for they are too many for me. Perhaps I shall be able to defeat them and drive them out of the land. For I know that he whom you bless is blessed, and he whom you curse is cursed." So Balaam had a reputation. He had a reputation as being a prophet, and they had faith in his ability to either curse or bless. So the elders of Moab and the elders of Midian departed with the diviner's fee in their hand. So when you wanted the service of a diviner like Balaam, you had to pay him, and that was called a diviner's fee. And they came to Balaam and spoke to him the words of Balak. He said to them, so Balaam said, "Well, stay here tonight, and I will bring back word to you. As the Lord speaks to me." So the princes of Moab stayed with Balaam. Notice, as the Lord speaks with me. Balaam had a relationship with God. He had, in a sense, that God spoke to him, because he's confident here that basically, all right, stay here, and let's see what the Lord speaks to me. So, besides being a soothsayer, God was using Balaam, and we don't know how he used him before this. Verse 9, then God came to Balaam and said, "Who are these men with you?" So we see God is familiar with Balaam. Balaam's familiar with God. So Balaam said to God, Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab, has sent me to you, saying, Look, the people has come out of Egypt, and they cover the face of the earth. Come now, curse them for me. Perhaps I shall be able to overpower them and drive them out. And God said to Balaam, You shall not go with them. You shall not curse the people, for they are blessed. So Balaam rose in the morning and said to the princes of Balak, Go back to your land, for the Lord has refused to give me permission to go with you. But, of course, Balak is not happy with that, the king of Moab, and he sends his princes again, this time higher dignitaries, to Balaam, and offering him more wealth and more prestige. And so the princes return. If we go to verse 15 now, then Balak again sent princes more numerous and more honorable. And they came to Balaam and said, Thus says Balak, the son of Zippor, Please, let nothing hinder you from coming to me. For I will certainly honor you greatly, and I will do whatever you say to me. Therefore, please, curse this people for me. You think Balaam's going to succumb to this offer for wealth and riches? Do people today succumb to the temptations of wealth and riches and put that first as their God? Then Balaam answered and said to the servants of Balak, Though Balak were to give me his house full of silver and gold, I cannot go beyond the word of the Lord, my God, to do less or more. Now therefore, please, stay here tonight, that I may know what more the Lord will say to me. So he's going to go to the Lord again. Maybe the Lord will change his mind. But you know, Balaam wants to go, but you know, he knows that that he has to, that God will tell him what to do, and he has to, well, he should obey. And God came to Balaam at night and said to him, If the men come to call you, rise and go with them, but only the word which I speak to you, that you shall do. So Balaam rose in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the princes of Moab. Now look, verse 20, you got to read very carefully, okay? And God came to Balaam at night and said, so he came to him in a vision, If the men come to call you, he's not saying rise and go with them. He's saying if the men come to call you, if they come to rise, to ask you to rise and go with them, you are, but only the words which I speak to you, that you shall do. So Balaam rose in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the princes of Moab. Then God's anger was aroused. Well, why? Because if you read verse 20, why? Because he went. He went. God's anger was aroused against Balaam because he went. So you have to read verse 20 carefully. God is telling him not to go. He's not telling him to rise. He's saying, if the men come to call you, if they say to you, rise and go with them, but only the word which I speak to you, that you shall do. And obviously, God told him not to go. And so Balaam rose in the morning and he went. So here we have one of the most interesting parts of the Bible. An angel of the Lord. So God sends an angel to strike down Balaam. And the angel of the Lord took his stand in the way as an adversary against him. And Balaam was riding on his donkey and his two servants with him. Now the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way with his drawn sword in his hands. So God allowed the donkey to see the angel, but Balaam couldn't. And the donkey turned aside out of the way and went to the field. So Balaam struck the donkey to turn her back onto the road. Then the angel of the Lord stood in a narrow path between the vineyards, with a wall on this side and a wall on that side. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she pushed herself against the wall and crushed Balaam's foot against the wall, so he struck her again. Then the angel of the Lord went further and stood in a narrow place where there was no way to turn, either to the left or to the right. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she lay down under Balaam. So Balaam's anger was aroused, and he struck the donkey with his staff. Then the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey, and she said to Balaam, What have I done to you that you have struck me these 3 times? Now, some people would say, oh, this is a nice story, a nice allegory, a nice story. But if you turn to 2 Peter 2, verse 15, 2 Peter 2, it's just another nice story in the Bible. Children will like that. Go to 2 Peter 2, verse 15. Talking about false teachers, Peter says, They have forsaken the right way and gone astray, following the way of Balaam, the son of Beor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness, But he was rebuked for his iniquity. A dumb donkey, speaking with a man's voice, restrained the madness of the prophet. So here's verification in the New Covenant by the Apostle Peter. But this is not a story, but this actually happened. That basically a dumb donkey speaking with a man's voice. God allowed the donkey to speak with a man's voice. How did he do that? Did he give the donkey a brain for a few minutes? Was there an angel in the donkey speaking to the donkey? I don't know, and we're not going to know in this life. But the fact is that this is true. And if we go to verse 30, so the donkey said, Am I not your donkey in which you have ridden ever since I became yours? Was I ever disposed to do this to you? And he said, no. So he's talking with the donkey. Maybe he has a sorcerer. He thinks, well, okay, maybe there's something. Obviously, there's something supernatural going on here. Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way with his drawn sword in his hand. And he bowed his head and fell flat on his face. And the angel of the Lord said, Why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? Behold, I have come out to stand against you, because your way is perverse before me. The donkey saw me and turned aside from me these 3 times. If not, surely I would have killed you by now, and let her live. And Balaam said to the angel, I have sinned, for I did not know you stood in the way. Then the angel of the Lord said to Balaam, Go with the men, but only the word that I speak to you. Let's go back to 34. I have sinned, for I did not know you stood in the way against me. Now therefore, if it displeases you, I will turn back. But God changes his mind. He says, no, because he's going to use Balaam in a powerful way. Then the angel of the Lord said to Balaam, Go with the men, but only the word that I speak to you, in other words, that God speaks to you, that you shall speak. So Balaam went with the princes. And so basically, Balaam goes to meet Balak, and he brings him high on the mountain, and they sacrifice bulls and rams, actually set on 7 altars. So they set up 7 altars, and they're sacrificing bulls and rams. And if you go to Numbers, so basically in the first prophecy, God actually prophesies through Balaam. Rather than a curse, God prophesies a blessing through Balaam. And you can read about that. I'm not going to read that, but you can read about Balaam's first prophecy that blesses Israel in Numbers 23, verses 7 through 10. Balak's then very upset, and he takes Balak is very upset. He takes Balaam to another part of the mountain, and he says, asks him to curse Israel again. And they set up their sacrifices and so forth. And Balaam's second prophecy also blesses Israel. And I'm not going to read that, but you could read that prophecy in Numbers 23, verses 18 to 24. Balak isn't giving up, and he asks Balaam to, again, curse Israel. And if you go to Numbers 24, verse 3, this is his third prophecy that God utters through Balaam. In Numbers 24, in verse 3, Then Balaam took up his oracle and said, The utterance of Balaam, the son of Beor, the utterance of the man whose eyes are open, the utterance of him who hears the words of God, who sees the vision of the Almighty, all true, who falls down with eyes wide open. How lovely are your tents, O Jacob, your dwellings, O Israel, like valleys that stretch out, like gardens by the riverside, like aloes planted by the Lord, like cedars beside the waters. He will pour water from his buckets, and his seed shall be in many waters. His king shall be higher than Agar, and his kingdom shall be exalted. God brings him out of Egypt. He has strength like a wild ox. He shall consume the nations, his enemies. He shall break their bones and pierce them with his arrows. He bows down, he lies down as a lion, and as a lion, who shall arouse him? Blessed is he who blesses you, Israel, and curses he who curses you. Well, obviously, Balak was not happy with that. And so, let's just go over here to... So again, Balak is not pleased, but he still asks Balaam to curse Israel. And we come to the final prophecy of Balaam in Numbers 24 and verse 15. Numbers 24 and verse 15. So Balaam took up his oracle and said, the utterance of Balaam, the son of Peor, and the utterance of the man whose eyes are open, the utterance of him who hears the words of God, and has the knowledge of the Most High, who sees the vision of the Almighty, who falls down with eyes wide open. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star shall come out of Jacob. A scepter shall rise out of Israel, and batter the brow of Moab, and destroy all the sons of tumult. Well, he's talking about the Messiah here. He's talking about Jesus Christ. I behold him, but not near. A star has come out of Jacob. A scepter shall rise out of Israel, and batter the brow of Moab, and destroy all the sons of tumult. And Edom shall be a possession. Seir also his enemy shall be a possession, while Israel does valiantly. Out of Jacob one shall have a dominion and destroy the remains of the city. Then you look. Okay, so we see that Balaam 4 times basically blesses Israel. You know, Proverbs 19 and verse 21, you don't have to go there, but Proverbs 19 verse 21 is interesting and related to this, where Proverbs says, there are many plans in a man's heart. Nevertheless, the Lord's counsel, that will stand. So no matter what Balaam wanted to do, he couldn't do anything except what God put into his mouth. Now, so God used this wicked prophet. He spoke to him, and he also prophesied. He used him to prophesy. But now we come to Balaam's plan to entice Israel to sin. So now they come up with a plan. And if you go to Numbers 25 in verse 1. Now Israel remained in Archaea Grove, and the people began to commit harlotry with the women of Moab. They invited the people to the sacrifices of their gods, and the people ate and bowed down to their gods. So Israel was joined to Baal of Peor, and the anger of the Lord was aroused against Israel. Then the Lord said to Moses, take all the leaders of the people and hang the offenders before the Lord, out in the sun, that the fierce anger of the Lord may turn away from Israel. So Moses said to the judges of Israel, every one of you kill his men who were joined to Baal of Peor. And besides that, in verse 9, and those who died in the plague were 24,000. So besides these individuals who were killed by the leaders of Israel for indulging in these abominations that God hates, basically committing adultery and fornication with the women of Baal, pagan women, and also basically being joined to their idols and the sacrifices. 24,000 also died in the plague. Verse 16, then the Lord spoke to Moses, said, harass the Midianites and attack them. Now the Midianites were with the Moabites. Sometimes they're called the whole peoples were called Midianites. For they harassed you. Harass the Midianites, attack them. For they harassed you with their schemes, by which they seduced you in the matter of Peor and in the matter of Cosbi, the daughter of a leader of Midian, their sister, who was killed in the day of the plague because of Peor. Now, what does Balaam have to do with all this? I said that Balaam was behind this. What evidence is there? Let's go to Revelation 2 and verse 14. Revelation 2 and verse 14. And the angel of the church in Pergamos, Jesus says to the angel of the church in Pergamos, right? Verse 14, but I have a few things against you, because you have there those who hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to put a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed to idols and commit sexual immorality. So here we see that it was Balaam who taught Balak, the king of Moab, to put a stumbling block by luring the children of Israel into committing sexual immorality and to things sacrificed to idols. Now, what happens to Balaam if you go to Joshua 13 and verse 22? Joshua 13 and verse 22. Basically, God tells Israel to take the land of the Moabites, and so they are warring against the Moabites. And in verse 22, the children of Israel also killed with the sword Balaam, the son of Beor, the soothsayer, among those who were killed by them. So basically, it's a tribe of Reuben, because Reuben was going to take this land for themselves, along with Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh. And so what was Balaam doing there? He lives in Mesopotamia. He lives hundreds of miles away. But yet he was there, and obviously consulting with the king of Moab, and he was killed. He was killed, but not the way of Balaam or the influence of Balaam. If you go to Joshua 22 and verse 17, Joshua 22, we're going to see that sexual immorality with the pagan peoples was going to continue, and also idol worship was going to continue. The ways of Balaam that were going to cause Israel to sin. Joshua 22 and verse 17. And basically, Joshua was upset with the behavior of the Israelites, in that they were rebelling against the Lord. And he says in verse 17, "Is the iniquity of Peor not enough for us, from which we are not cleansed till this day, although there was a plague in the congregation of the Lord?" So even though God punished Israel and there was a plague, apparently the Israelites, even during the time of Joshua, were still involved in iniquity of Peor, or in other words, in worshiping Baal and in sexual immorality. So this was going to continue, and this was going to be a stumbling block for the people of Israel. Well, what does that have to do with us today? Well, if you go to Jude 4, please. Jude 4. Jude is right before Revelation. Jude warns us to contend for the faith. And he says in verse 4, "For certain men have crept in unnoticed, who long ago were marked out for this condemnation, ungodly men who turn the grace of our God into lewdness and deny the only Lord God and our Lord Jesus Christ." So there were people coming into the church who were basically teaching things like, we don't have to worry about sinning, grace of God covers that, the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. We're under grace. We don't have to worry about keeping the law, for example. And even denying the only Lord God and our Lord Jesus Christ. At verse 11, "Woe to them, for they have gone in the way of Cain, have run greedily in the error of Balaam, for profit, and perished in the rebellion of Korah." So again, Balaam is mentioned here, and in connection to these men who are false prophets, who are false teachers, who are coming into the church, who are causing God's people to sin, deceiving them. So, what does this have to do with us today? Well, the way of Balaam, of course, is the way of idol worship and sexual immorality. And these things cause Israel to sin continually. And these things can cause us to sin and to fall away from God. Idol worship. Well, you could say, well, I don't worship any idols. Well, do you have some false beliefs, perhaps, that might not be biblical? That lead your walk in faith that might not be true? Is your pursuit of money your idol? where, that's your main focus. And remember, we cannot serve mammon and God. Is money and gain and get, is that where your focus is and not on God as it should be? What about your work? Are you a workaholic? Your whole life is based upon, your job and what you can achieve and feeling satisfied, and you don't have time for God? Or your possessions? Are your possessions, anything that you possess, is that an idol? Is that an idol? And also, there are, we could look to some Christians in some denominations that do have idols, that particularly in the Catholic area, that are not biblical and take away from our focus on Jesus Christ and God. So the way of Balaam is the way that Satan uses to separate us from God. Sexual immorality. Just look at this nation today and the sexual immorality that is taking place in our government, in our leading figures in entertainment. Families have broken down, divorces, single-parent families, people living together, same-sex marriages. Look at how sexual immorality has led people away from God, and this is the way of Balaam. So, in order to avoid the way of Balaam, we have to stay close to God, and we have to develop the mind and character of Jesus Christ through the Holy Spirit that lives in us.